Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Mollusk here, and unbidden, I'm going to answer that question you've all been dying to ask me, but have clearly felt that I'm too cool and unapproachable to come right out and do it directly. And you'd be right, but I'm a generous invertebrate, so I'm going to walk you through how to get into Malifaux. First, a quick summary. We're going to go through the rules, the fluff, the wargaming essentials, the models, and then terrain. And at the end I'll give you an estimate for how much it is likely to cost you to start completely from scratch. Obviously many of you will already be entrenched in wargaming, and will have a lot of the essentials to hand already, but I'm going to try to be eclectic and cater to the complete newcomers to our little world, who perhaps have stumbled upon this channel in their search for some rather exotic porn. Oops. I did mean to try to keep this child friendly, so I probably shouldn't have said that. I promise I'll try to keep the language light in future, but I can't promise there won't be educational moments to come. Also, prices will be quoted in pound sterling, because that's a proper currency, it's what I'm familiar with, and I'm biased towards trying to grow the Malifaux player base within the British Isles. Prices in dollars can be found on the website of Weird Miniatures, which is the company that makes Malifaux, and the prices that I'm going to be quoting are a little bit lower than what you'd get if you typed in the exchange rate, because, a word to the wise, you can get products cheaper by going through local distributors such as Darksphere or Wayland Games or other websites and stores like that. I'm not in the pay of any of these companies, I'm just a simple hobbyist trying to improve my chances of getting an opponent by helping other hobbyists get into the game. So, rules. This was a bit of a tricky decision when I first started playing Malifaux all those weeks ago. The first thing to note is that Malifaux is a miniature war game, and the rules for specific models come on cards which you get when you buy the models themselves. New models and their rules are released in waves. A bunch of new models will be designed in a batch together, playtested and balanced in a beta release, and then a finalised rule set will be released all at once in a rulebook, and card sets known as arsenal decks broken down by faction as the models themselves slowly filter out according to Weird's release cycle. Weird Miniatures offers a variety of ways to go about getting rules for the main game and all the different models they create, which can be quite confusing. I'm going to make things simple by saying there are two types of people. The first type of person is someone who already has friends who play Malifaux, and I'll add that this person doesn't care about anything else but playing the game. For this person, just buying the models themselves, which come with their own rules, will probably be enough, as you can borrow the rules from your friends or pick it up as you play. Maybe grab some spare cards from them on the cheap, or if you want to be studious, you could buy this rules manual, which is a well-indexed little book that comes with all the rules for playing the main Malifaux game and not a lot else. If you need rules for models you don't have, for example if you wanted to use proxies to test out new additions to your crew before you buy them, or if you wanted some upgrade cards which sometimes you can't get with the models, you could buy an arsenal deck. Currently there's a wave 1 and a wave 2 of each faction. I believe there's a wave 3 on the way, and you can get them for about £5 or £6. So if you're staying with one faction it's not really that expensive, but be aware that Malifaux is rather cunningly designed and you are likely to be dipping out into multiple other factions. And so if you do want to expand your collection, then buying rules this way quickly starts to rack up the dosh. The second type of person is a person who doesn't necessarily have friends already playing Malifaux to support them with the rules of the game. For these people, and particularly if they're unsure as to which faction or crew they want to start with, or are pretty sure they're going to spend a fair amount of time with Malifaux and will want to expand their collection, I would highly recommend these books. And if you're interested, this option is what I went with. This first book is the rule book. It has all the rules found in the rules manual, as well as all the model cards from every faction for Wave 1, with the addition of some stories and background to the universe of the game. This book, Crossroads, essentially contains all the rule cards for every faction for Wave 2, as well as additional scenarios for playing the game and some more nice stories. As for fluff, for the backstory, things aren't quite like they were with Games Workshop and Warhammer, as each of the factions in Malifaux doesn't have its own codex or army book, and the backstory is something more that you piece together from various different sources. These books, for example, provide stories about the world, and the what are they called, character entries in the book provide a little bio for each model. As far as I can tell, Weird is interested in a living storyline that keeps on developing, and produce these chronicles periodically. I haven't really read them, but I'm presuming there's stories in them. And they also do this Breachside Broadcast podcast, which is basically a free audiobook, and it's done very well. I actually find it quite enjoyable. If you liked listening to the radio on the game Fallout 3, then you're going to love this. Fluff isn't everybody's thing, and I know some people claim to take or leave it, but I think there's a reason why we're not all playing chess. And I think a gripping hook for the imagination is important for a game where you push expensive blobs of plastic around. But let's get on to the accessories. Malifaux is unusual among wargames in that it is played with cards, not dice, and you can use a normal pack of playing cards. For example, go down to Tiger and buy a pack for £1. Alternatively, you want something a bit more fancy, you can buy a Fate deck from Weird or Dark Sphere or any of those other companies that distribute Weird's products, and that'll cost you about £7. And they're really good quality, and I'd say they're worth it. Technically optional, but believe me when I say you want this item, is a metal card case or card guard, which you can get for about £10 from various companies. I got mine from a website called Merchant of Magic. Protect your expensive cards when travelling, keep things nice and tidy on the table by flipping the cards into the lid, and look the frickin' bee's knees. Get one, you won't regret it. Next up, paints. Oh, paints. Some people love it, some people hate it. But Malifaux is a game where you buy, assemble and paint your own models. To do this you'll need paintbrushes, which you can buy from the Works for £1.99 for 4. They'll last you a couple of months and are fine enough to dot the eyes on your models. I've forgotten to add a picture of glue on this slide, but you'll want some super glue, and you can go down to Poundland to buy a set of 4 or 5 glues that stick both plastic and metal and will last you a couple of years. All for £1. The first step in painting your models is a base coat, and for that I absolutely promise you, you want some matte black or matte white spray paint. You'll save enough time to get a doctorate, and because I never ever want to see again another child go into Games Workshop and buy a £15 spray paint, get your sphincters down to Poundland and pick up a whole spray can for £1. It's cheap and it works, what else do you want? After that, I'm afraid you're probably going to have to spice things up a bit with some more colour. Paints aren't my specialty, so maybe there's cheaper or better, but I tend to use Citadel paints. They're about £2.50 each. What you want will depend on the colour schemes that you're intending to go for with your crew, but to cover all bases, ready for it, you're going to need a black and a white, a dark red and a light red, a dark blue and a light blue, a yellow and a lighter yellow or cream, a dark green and a light green, a dark purple and a light purple, a dark skin tone and a light skin tone, a dark brown and a light brown, and a gold and a silver metal colour. In total that will cost you about £45, but paints are something you can start off small with and build your collection over time. Next, you're technically going to need a playing surface. Malifaux typically plays on a 3x3 foot table, which most people should have access to in their kitchen and or bedroom floor, if they don't feel like venturing out to their friendly local game stores such as Darksphere. To play a game on that table, you're going to need a measuring device, such as a tape measure or one of these fancy frickin' ruler protractor things I've seen some people using nowadays. Costs can probably vary, you can probably get these for about £1, but I'm going to say £5 just to be safe. And then you're going to want some markers, because Malifaux is full of schemes and conditions like poison, burning and whatever else, and you're going to have to keep track of them. Prices are going to vary because you could make them from paper or you could carve them yourself from illegal ivory or something. What I'd recommend as, a halfway ground would be some of the bases sold by Weird themselves. Weird sells them in all kinds of exciting colours, in fact one for nearly every faction, sorry Gremlins, and they come in different sizes, 30mm, 40mm and 50mm. I would recommend buying 2 packs of the 30mm, which come in packs of 10 and cost £3 each. Perhaps go for different colours to distinguish your corpses from your scrap, or your schemes from your paralysed models, and then get 1 pack of 2 50mm bases for things like illusionary trees and ice pillars and other scenery marker things that your guys can summon in. Whilst we're on bases, I'm going to take the time for a little aside and gush all over the place about how completely in love with Weird's bases I am. I don't know what it is about them. I absolutely hate modelling bases and putting flock and crap all over them. Cannot stand spending time on them when I could be doing painting up my other models. But add a rim on the base and I just flip out and go mental on them. I've started painting mine like poker chips, which also helps me distinguish the different model types in the game. And if you're offended by eyesores such as this little gap in the top of the base, then for the princely sum of basically doubling your model's cost, you can buy these freaking fantastic metal inserts. Base your models like a pro and don't flock up. Simples. Finally we get to models, and this could be a video in itself so I'm not going to dwell on this, but there are 7 different factions. Each have a pretty expansive model range, and many of the models are able to cross-faction in one way or another, which vastly opens up the variety of the game and the likelihood that you're going to start collecting more than one faction. Starting out, however, you're going to want to have a, what they call crew, and you can buy ready-made crews as a box set. These generally consist of 6 to 10 models. They always contain a specific master, a henchman, and a variety of minion and peon models. Sometimes an enforcer or two. The beauty of this is that these box sets are plug and play. I mean, they're not specially sculpted tournament lists, but they're not weak either. They seem designed to introduce you to the synergies and playstyles that characterise certain masters. Costs very little, but £25 to £35 is likely, and in terms of models that is literally all you need to have tactically interesting games. I think typically these box sets will allow you to build a crew of up to 30 to 35 soulstones. The recommended size of the game is 50 soulstones, and so to beef your crew up a bit, you're probably going to want to buy a few additional models, by which I mean 3 or 4. And that'll probably cost you between £15 to £30 depending on what you go for. And Malifaux offers a surprising and impressive depth of choice, so some willpower might be needed to try to curb your buying a bit. If you know where you can buy willpower, please let me know in the comments. Lastly we come to terrain, and this picture isn't of Malifaux, it's of Warhammer Fantasy, but it's demonstrating that you can build an intricate and verdant battlefield out of any old junk you find around in the house. And it works perfectly, trust me, I'm a professional. So, to experience all the mechanics of Malifaux, you don't need to spend a penny on terrain. Your house is brimming with it. However, if you find yourself encumbered with such unnecessary things as a measure of self-respect, you could acquire some better terrain. Good terrain tends to be a bit expensive and a ball ache to paint, by which, children, I mean a dull, chronic pain in the male reproductive organ. Maybe your biology teacher or creepy gym teacher could point one out to you. Trees are nice, everyone likes trees. You can buy some Citadel woodland for... you couldn't get it cheaper than £18, I think you can probably get it for like £14, £15. And if you can, beg, borrow, steal or sell your grandmother to get the Garden of Moor, which is a fantastic terrain set that used to be sold by Games Workshop, but I don't know if they do it anymore. If you can't get hold of this, Pegasus Miniatures sell cathedral-like buildings in the right size, in Gothic style, for about £20 as well. As you might be able to tell, terrain is not my specialty, so perhaps some of the other viewers could put their suggestions for terrain down in the comments. So the answer to the big question, how much does it cost to get into Malifaux? Well, if you pick up both rulebooks, a fate deck and card case, glue, brushes, spray paint and £45 worth of paints, tape measure, 3 packs of bases, a crew kit, and maybe a few models, and or maybe some terrain depending on how much you want to spend on one or the other, my estimate is that starting Malifaux from scratch will cost you about £200. Does that sound like a lot? If it does, clearly you didn't play 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy. But why not go ask Daddy how much those golf clubs cost? Or ask Mummy what she paid for her PlayStation 4 and Grand Theft Auto? Or what your little sister spent on that skateboard she snapped after a month doing that variable kickflip at the skate park? Or what your friend spends on his miniature aquarium? You get my point. Hobbies are expensive. And if you think you can buy a board game for about 30 quid, and you play it, what, 3 times? 10 times, I'll give you 10 times in your whole life. And you compare that to the modelling, the painting, the time spent crew designing, and working out the synergies between models, and then the time spent playing, where you could easily end up playing a game a week for years. Which, okay, maybe that's for certain people, but it doesn't really sound too unreasonable to me if it's a hobby you intend to commit to. But basically, I don't think it's an unreasonable investment for the amount of enjoyment you get out of this game. Income dependent, of course, cheat responsibly. But anyway guys, that's it. Hope that's been useful, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.